Hey, Twisted listeners, I'm Cindy,
And I'm Diva
and this is Twisted Listeners, a podcast about murder.
and Liz.
And this is part two of Unholy Murders of the Cloth. That's what I called it.
Yeah.
Did you like that? Is that too
Easter.
much?
I did. I love it. I love Unholy. You were saying holy moly. You were doing like a lot of puns with the description. So I really like that.
I
Yeah,
couldn't help myself.
this is the Easter topic. Yeah.
Yeah, that we all need.
hmm
Awesome. Okay, so we're just gonna get into this. What's the news? I have something. I was just looking at my
Mm.
dog. My dog is deaf. I don't know if I've ever told anybody that. And it's really convenient. He doesn't bark at noises. He's not afraid on the 4th
Yeah.
of July. It's super,
Great.
super chill. But I feel so bad because today I realized he's never heard baby talk.
Oh.
I know. Isn't that sad to think of a
I
sweet
mean,
little pup
but I feel
not?
like, when you petting on him and loving on him, he gets like the message that he's a baby.
He does. Oh God, when he's
Yeah.
laying across my lap and I'm contorting my body to work on my computer, he knows he's a baby. But I
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
feel like he's missing that beautiful all the bullshit that we do. He doesn't get the benefit of that, and that's a little heartbreaking. I just thought about that for the first time in 11 years today. So that's
Oh.
I know, that's my news. All right. It rained again the last 2 days in Los Angeles.
It was dumb. It was dumb.
The fuck? Rory rode his motorcycle to work and was like, it's raining. So that's really cool because it was forecasted nowhere. And so he got to ride home in the rain 2 nights in a row. And the second night, I'm kind of like, that's your fault because the weather hasn't really changed. So who's really at fault there? But the first night was definitely a surprise. So there's my check-in. You got anything, Diva?
Uh, no, my cats are being cute. That's since you talked about animal stuff.
Okay. Yeah.
My cat Salem does this thing where she's sleeping, but she kicks out one little foot in the air, and it's really stupid.
That's really cute.
Yeah,
That sounds really
I love it.
nice.
Yeah, cat feet are like the greatest thing on the planet Earth, and no one can convince me otherwise.
Yeah, hell yeah, dude.
They're so good.
They're
Yeah.
so dainty and cute and
Yeah.
I love them.
Dog feet are stinky and weird.
Dog feet are kind of gross, truly.
Yeah.
I mean, there are dogs that prance and they have little tiny feet. I had a dog that was over 100 pounds and his feet were the size of a chihuahua's, and that was amazing.
That's great. That's great. Yeah, you want them to be disproportionately small, ideally.
Yes. It's fucking hilarious. He looked like he was on toothpicks. It was so great. His whole body was super fat and his legs were just super, super skinny.
That's fantastic.
It was
That's fantastic.
It was Alex. You met Alex.
Yeah, of course. I know that dog.
Yeah.
My cat, who's really little and skinny, has big old bunny feet, and my cat, who's very rotund, has dinky tiny feet.
I love it. Yes. Okay. Well, anyway, there's the animal foot talk, animal talk, all the things you really came here for. You're starting this time, right?
I guess, yeah.
All right.
Mine is really weird and a little shorter, but that's okay. We're on a little bit of a time crunch today. Mm-hmm. This is the story of Mykhaylo Kofel. This happened in 2001 in Kendall, which is southwest of Miami in Florida.
Okay.
So Mykhaylo also went by Mike. He is an 18-year-old monk in training at the prestigious Holy Cross Academy in Kendall, like I said.
Mm-hmm.
And Mike was originally from Ukraine, and he had been at the school for 4 years, which I guess meant he was 13 or 14. I also saw 5 years. So he basically went there as a high school thing, I think, which I didn't know that you could start being trained as a monk when you're a minor. That seems weird. But I guess you can.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. I'm yeah, I don't know. I know nothing about this.
Yeah. But I also saw a thing where it was one of the head priests recruited him, and I'm at 13. I don't know about that. Okay. How does that work? Hey, you look like you'd be a great monk.
Yeah. I don't know.
It's not like recruiting to be a gymnast, you know what I mean? It's
you've got the build.
to be a good monk. It's weird. Okay, so Michelle or Shelley Lewis is our next character here. Shelley is a Byzantine Catholic nun, and I will not take the time on the podcast to bore you with what a Byzantine Catholic nun, but suffice to say it comes from Greece and Byzantine times, and it's very conservative, old school, hardcore.
Okay, so it's like the gnarly nar, which I'm glad you said that, because my next one, I was going to try to explain that, and I was like, I don't know how to explain that.
I mean, I know a lot about monastic orders, like because of my expertises in history and stuff. So, but like again, no one cares. You'll all be asleep,
right?
But just
the idea is that it's like gnarly.
Yeah, it's not a liberal situation.
Yeah,
so
right.
So Shelley is also a teacher at the school. So she kind of lives on campus and she teaches the monks how to be, monastic and shit. Shelley was originally from Ohio, and I thought her life story was actually kind of interesting. It's kind of irrelevant, but just for really quick. She had actually gotten a divorce in 1985 and had a super unhappy marriage, and had worked as an actuary at a bank, and lived like a totally normal life, like drinking, doing whatever, just being a person. But she fell into kind of a spiritual slump, and like she had always been raised Catholic. She was Catholic. And at age 29, she started going to this church at the academy, and then just like pretty shortly thereafter went boom, full monastic, decided to be a nun, signed up for it.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
That's a turn.
She had to give away all of her stuff. She had to just like completely get rid of her like worldly life, which that's a wild ass decision. Like,
yeah.
A lot of nuns, I think, go into it like kind of like an after high school thing, or like very early in life.
Yeah.
But like to kind of live your life further and then be like, meh, throw it in the trash is like pretty bold.
Yeah, it is. God, I wonder what like precipitates something like that.
Yeah. She said she just felt like disillusioned and like not fulfilled in life, essentially. But she had only been there 10 years. So she kind of came to things late. And she lived together with another nun, like I said, in a house on the school's campus. And there's not a lot of build up here to our main event. So I'm just gonna say what Mykhaylo will later claim, or Mike here. Mike will later claim that Shelley belittled him, quote unquote, his exact words, and verbally abused him.
Okay.
But it's unclear what specifically he's claiming triggered this, or if she did or not, or if that's bullshit. There's no clear excuse. I suspect it may be bullshit. The one thing I saw that kind of corroborated it is that I saw that she was violent with one of her first husband, or her only husband, and like would throw things at him and stuff. So that implies she has a little bit of a temper, but that's also quite a personal situation. That's different than being a teacher.
Yeah, agreed.
So who knows? I mean, I kind of think it's bullshit.
I mean, it means she has the capacity to do something like that. But again, like that might not be, you might not have that capacity in every relationship or every type of relationship. And also, like, this is what they always do. They always make an excuse. They always have a reason that's not their fault and blah, 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 blah.
Yeah. And of course, there are like this reputation for certain nuns and nun teachers being like really harsh. And I know people who've had that experience, but there's also for sure nice ones out there.
Yeah, like so Kathy Sesnick, who I covered on the last episode. Like, she was great.
So my feelings are that it's kind of bullshit, but it's hard to know. But in any case, that's what he later says precipitated this. But he doesn't like say any specific statements that she made or anything.
Okay.
So on March 25th, 2001, Mike drinks half a bottle of wine, which I have to put this in a footnote here. Okay, maybe he doesn't drink a lot because he's a monk. But I am rolling my eyes back into my head so hard at this as a justification or like reasoning that he included for like what comes next. Like as if like, oh, I was so out of sorts, but that is 2 glasses of wine. Okay.
But the flip side of that, as somebody who doesn't drink, I would be on the fucking floor. I also wouldn't be capable of doing probably what I assume happens next, but I would be fucking wasted. And I know this for a fact because I drink maybe once a year, and I've had 2 glasses of wine as one of those like yearly things. I'm fucked up. So I don't want to say, but here's the thing. I have never murdered anybody.
That's true. But like as someone who drinks 2 glasses of wine frequently, I'm judging him. That's stupid.
Also, I'm pretty sure that like monks get down with the booze. I feel like that's one of their vices that's like totally chill.
Oh yeah. Yeah, for sure. I mean, they still make beer. So really,
Yeah,
really good
fuck
beer.
yeah.
Anyway, so he has these 2 glasses of wine. Oh my gosh. And then he goes to Shelley's apartment, and we don't know the exact sequence of events, but he stabs her 91 times with a steak knife and a fire poker.
Holy shit.
And was also, and severely beats her as well.
God damn, dude. That's fucked.
Yeah, it's really gnarly. And she was shortly thereafter found at the home in a pool of blood, and her and I think this is significant to me, her body was nude.
Okay.
Yeah, but there's no evidence, quote unquote, of a sexual assault, but I don't know how much they looked into it. And either way, to me, there seems to be kind of a sexual motive here. It's not so much about the belittling, quote unquote. There's like a humiliation aspect here, an overkill thing, for sure. So Mike is arrested and charged with first-degree murder. He faces the death penalty if convicted, because Florida, right?
Right.
The legal proceedings will actually last for 4 years, kind of going back and forth with different. This isn't before, no trial. This is just hearings and bullshit and like complaints, and like there's lots of stuff going back and forth.
Well, he knows he's up for the death penalty, so I'm sure he's trying to like prolong that as much as possible, even if he's in prison while doing so, because he's fucking guilty as fuck.
Yeah. He enters a plea of not guilty. He brings up the belittling, like I said. He also, this pisses me off, he claims that he didn't, quote, intend to kill Sister Shelley, but only to hurt her
with
when
91
he entered her room.
Stabs. Oh, I see. When he started, his intention was to hurt her, not to kill her.
And then he said he, quote unquote, accidentally stabbed her, 91 times.
With 2 different weapons.
Yes. No, it was an accident.
Come on.
Yeah.
Oops. Yeah, that's fucking ridiculous.
So he says that shit at first. He also claims, and this is like the big controversial core of the case, but I will loop back because I don't understand why it is. He makes a huge deal of claiming that he was molested by 2 senior priests at the academy. Father Gregory Went, who was actually the founder and like president of the school. So obviously this is a guy with a lot of power, right?
Right.
And another priest named Damien Gabot. And of course the priests say that they're lying, which, yeah, of course, say that he's lying. And prosecutors and defense both try to get the priests to testify and to like be involved and be transparent in the trial or in the hearings here, but they are told, wouldn't you know it, the priests are told to stay silent by a team of 15 lawyers and a private investigator hired by the church with a capital C, the Catholic Church.
Oh God.
So they don't help either. They do not help either side whatsoever.
Okay.
Nor do they talk to anyone. And the attorneys actually like band together, the prosecution and defense, and give a press conference being like, fuck these priests. And they actually say out loud, like, the church has actively hindered our investigation.
Wow. I'm glad they called them out though. Like, I feel like that's not very common. Like, that doesn't happen a lot because a lot of the time they have such power, such far reaching power. Like in my first one, the prosecutors and like the fucking higher ups and the police and the law were like, hey, stop investigating this because the Catholic Church told us to, so it's interesting that on both sides, they're like, yo, fuck this shit, that's kind of refreshing to be honest.
Yeah, because they were pissed that they were just silent. Like, this is so shitty. And it's also kind of a betrayal to Shelley. Like, she was like a devoted, like, fucking servant of this school.
Yeah.
And devoted Catholic. So it's fucked up.
It is.
So, So supposedly the church and authorities claim that investigation was opened up about these molestation claims, but guess what? Didn't happen.
Of course
and in a fairly recent-ish article about this case, they said that the priests are still like priesting. They're fine.
God. Yeah.
And the attorney for the priest, Mel Black, gave a couple weird quotes that about the molestation claims that I have to repeat because I don't love them, and I'll be curious to see if you feel the same way.
Okay.
He said regarding the accusations against the 2 priests from Mykhaylo Kofel, which he says the prosecutors invented to try to like, because they were mad about like how the case was going or something. He says, quote, they've been singing that duet for years and it's gotten them nowhere. There is sex appeal to this case. It's sensational and it involves a religious institution. They wanted to win this one badly.
Ew. Okay, but like, okay. First of all, fuck him. But second, I'm not going to sit here and be like, prosecutors wouldn't make shit up, because like that would be a flat out fucking lie. I just feel like
right.
Everybody's a villain. Everybody's a villain that we're talking about right now. We've got prosecutors that are horrible. We've got police that are terrible. We've got the Catholic Church. Like, I don't know. It's really hard. Like, obviously, there's a long and storied history of the Catholic Church, like, molesting and assaulting men and women, you know, but I don't know. I mean, I'm sure this is not a lie, but I also just didn't want to come off being like the prosecution would lie. Like, yes, they would all the time.
Right.
Every day,
no,
but
that's not it. It's more like this particular statement that these priests molested him is quite believable.
Yeah, it totally is. Like, absolutely.
Especially consider that he got recruited as like a young minor to go there, and from a vulnerable place, Ukraine, where he was like kind of fleeing.
Right.
It kind of tracks for me. Also, agreed. I can't get over that he said there's sex appeal to this case when it's literally about the murder of a nun and a guy saying he was molested as a minor.
Yeah, like,
and I'm like,
the word appeal is like
sex appeal
turning.
To me, sex appeal is if you like have like a husband kill the mistress, or like there's adults having affairs or something. Like that's like more like sex appeal.
Right.
Right.
This is like just like abuse.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't like it.
No.
In 2005. But I want to say really quick though that this whole thing, which becomes this huge thing about this case, I do find frustrating, because it's like, okay, I guess the priest molesting him, if that happened, proves he was in this like distressed or traumatized or mentally compromised state of mind, right?
Right.
But like, fucking Shelley didn't do it,
right?
So it's all kind of irrelevant in a way, because like it would be quite different if the case was he killed one of his abusers. Then that's like totally fucking different,
right?
You know. But it's like, she didn't do anything.
Right. Why did he kill her? Because somebody else abused. And to be fair, and I'm not like excusing this, but like oftentimes if somebody is abused, they are not going to kill their abuser. They're going to take it out or harm their abuser. They're going to take it out on somebody else. So it's not completely out of the realm of like, you know, what is not understandable, but what happens, I guess, to say that like he took it out on her. But it's also not a good, like, that's not a defense. That's just like,
no.
That's an explanation that is real, but it doesn't make it okay at all. You know what I mean?
No.
Yeah, I don't know.
So in 2005, finally, after all this hoo-ha, the prosecutors allowed him to plea.
Oh my God, you said hoo-ha?
Yeah.
That's the word for vagina. Do you mean hoopla?
Oh, I didn't know that was like technically what that meant.
Yeah, well, in my brain, I don't know about anybody else, but to me,
it's not something I've heard. I've not heard that used a lot, but yeah, hoopla is what I meant to say.
Yeah, I will not be editing that out.
No,
that's amazing.
Okay, after all this hoopla, hoo-ha sounded fun. Okay,
it is. After it all, is fun.
After all this hoopla, prosecutors allowed him to plead to second-degree murder and armed burglary, which I forget. I don't know what he burgled. But he was
probably
sentenced
breaking into her house, maybe.
Right.
Sorry. Go ahead.
He was sentenced to 30 years in prison for this.
Really? From death penalty to 30 years?
Yep.
Wow.
The judge said basically this leniency is because they believed his story about being molested by the two priests. Okay. Which again, I don't totally get it as far as like it's not connected to his killing Shelley, but maybe I'm not being sympathetic enough. Yeah. At sentencing, her mother, Shelley's mother, by the way, is like, she's like fucking hardcore crazy. Shelley's mother read a statement saying she's in heaven, called the murder vile and brutal, which said the sentence was very lenient, so she's basically pissed about the sentence. Then she also makes the unusual request that Mykhaylo Kofel be locked up in a cell covered with the gory crime scene photos of the murder.
I mean,
and the judge is like, dude, I can't do that. Like,
yeah, that's
not a thing.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to. It's not. I mean, that would fall under the category of like cruel and unusual.
It's not a thing. Yeah, we
No,
don't do that.
it's not a thing.
He gave a kind of blah statement saying, "I'm really sorry. I want to take full responsibility for my actions. If I could, I would give my life to hers." And in the last closing statement, I think is interesting. He said, "Murder is wrong no matter what." And I think that's interesting because the no matter what to me implies that he's saying, like, even though I had a reason, this is still wrong.
Yeah, it's like he can't stop blaming her
Yeah.
or making an
Yeah.
excuse.
Yeah. Yeah. Even though like I was basically driven to this, murder is still wrong. That's kind of like what he's saying.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
yeah. So this incident led to the school ultimately closing in 2004 because like basically all the students were, parents and whatever withdrew them from it, because also not only did this case happen and the, molestation allegations from Mike, but at the same time of this case, another case of sexual
Mhm.
battery against a minor was outed from the school that took place in 1997. So there's like a whole other layer of case on here.
Mhm.
Yeah, so that's pretty much the case.
Wow.
In 2022, a podcast about this case called Sacred Scandal came out. And one of the co-creators of the podcast was actually a senior at Holy Cross Academy when the murder happened. So I think that would be interesting to listen to and get more details.
Yeah, I bet that's really in depth and like super fucked up.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
wow. That's the thing about these cases that we're doing is it's terrible to say this, but like every single case has so many different facets to it and so many interconnections because the Catholic Church is just full of like horrible child molesting psychos. And like
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
weird to say that, but like
It's
to
true.
not say that is a lie because everywhere you look, that's what it is. Like
Yes.
that's it. There's no two ways about it. Like these cases are so every day, you know. I don't know. It blows my fucking mind. This shit blows my fucking mind. I never knew how deep this was going to be. Like,
Yeah. It's really rough.
yeah. Jesus. Okay. Well, my turn. Are you ready? Are you ready for
Okay.
more
Yeah.
fucking bullshit?
Yeah. It's gonna be delightful.
This is another one that has a lot of different pieces to it, so I'll try to get through them all quickly, but basically this is centered around like one guy, but also the dealings and doings of the Catholic Church, which will not surprise you. And if you're surprised at this point after listening to two of these episodes, like I don't know how to help you, but basically this is fucked up, but at this point
Yeah.
not unexpected. This is the story of Father Ryan Erickson. This is a much more contemporary story. What year was that last one that we just did that you did?
2001.
Okay, so this is, I mean, not much more contemporary than that, but more contemporary. Last week we both did like 60s cases, and now we're doing like 2000s
Right.
cases. So Ryan Erickson was born in 1973 in Fond du Lac, Wisconsin, or is it Fond du Lac? I don't know. I'm
I don't
sorry.
know.
Fond du Lac, we'll say, Wisconsin. And he was a fucking weirdo right from the start. He lived with both parents in a pretty religious household, but nothing like super over the top. Growing up, he was definitely the kid that hurt animals, and I will not go more in depth than that. But as we all
Thank
know,
you.
this is yes, it's for everybody's sake. But as we all know, this is a very bad sign.
Mhm.
That being said, he was also a really active kid and had like a decent amount of friends. He was like, presented as normal. So when he was in high school, his parents decided to move to another city, and he was like, I don't want to leave my friends behind. Which honestly, like, same, I get that. When I was 12, I'd moved every 2 years, and my parents were like, "Oh, we're moving again." And I was like, "Cool, have fun. I'm staying with my aunt and uncle. Like, fuck off. You're not fucking moving me again. We're
Oh
done. Like,
yeah.
I need
I
stability."
moved cross country when I was 10 and it was like so traumatic to leave my friends.
Yeah, and it's like,
Yeah.
I can tell you, like, they say, like, oh, until like 3rd or 4th grade, like, it's fine to move them around. They won't really notice. And I think that's true because most of my friends and people that I knew up until that point, I was like, ah, it's fine. See you later, whatever. But like the
Yeah.
last move when I was like 10 or 11, like it
That's tough.
bothered me. And I'm still in contact with some of the people that I made friends with from Oregon, like at that time. So I totally
Yeah.
understand it. Fucking sucks. So his parents did move. He stayed behind and they arranged for him to live with a priest who was a friend of the family. At this point, he became super, super religious. And I don't know that anything happened between him and the priest. There's nothing to indicate that it did. But he did become like a deeply conservative, over the top religious zealot while living with this Catholic priest. So there is that, right?
Yeah.
At the very least. Now, while in high school, Ryan was on the wrestling team, cross country, football, a bunch of other clubs, a bunch of other teams. So very, very active. And again, had a lot of friends, had a lot of acquaintances, at least, And in 1991, when Ryan was 17, a 14-year-old teammate from his wrestling team came forward and said that Ryan had sexually assaulted him. He said the two got
Mm.
together to hang out. They watched some porn. They drank some beers. He then passed out. And when he woke up, Ryan was fondling his genitals.
Ugh.
Ryan also offered him oral sex, and he declined and was like, fuck this. He then went home and told his mom, and she called the police. And this wasn't the first time this happened. Ryan later confessed that when he was 6 years old, he fondled his 4-year-old male cousin.
Ugh,
Now, I,
God.
I would not be surprised if there's more instances between 6 and 17 years, but these are the two we know of for
Reported
sure.
ones.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Ryan's dad was a Vietnam vet, and he suffered from PTSD, which is terrible and very, very common. War is the worst. If you support war,
Especially
stop
with
listening.
Vietnam.
Yeah. But I
Yeah.
mean, there's no good war. Vietnam was
No,
one
but
of them
that
all
one had like,
pointless.
yeah, but that one had like extra different flavors of trauma layered in.
Oh, so many. Yeah. It's
Yeah.
fucked up. I know a guy who was a Vietnam vet, and he refuses to get like veteran benefits. He wants to be homeless. He's like punishing himself. He doesn't take care of himself. It's all
Ugh.
like a weird way of doing penance. And he's such a lovely
Yeah.
guy, but he's like, I was a piece of shit, and he can like never forgive himself for what he did. It's really fucked up.
Awful.
Yeah. So Ryan's dad was very similar. He drank a lot when like he was like a straight up alcoholic, like all of Ryan's growing up. And as a result, Ryan also drank a lot. And this was through his entire life and starting pretty young because, monkey see, monkey do.
Yeah.
So it's really, really weird. On the one hand, we have this kid who on the surface is like super polite with adults, really well behaved, pretty popular, deeply religious. But then on the other hand, he's sexually assaulting boys. He himself is a teen alcoholic. He harms animals. And again, he's like maybe too deeply religious. So it's like this
Yeah.
weird dichotomy that kind of becomes the template for his entire life.
Or like using the religion too as a cover to be like, look how good I am.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And when he graduated high school, more bad shit happened. He would spend summers at a campground with his parents, and the year he turned 18, he was accused of assaulting a 14-year-old boy. He fondled this boy's genitals and also offered him oral sex. And this boy, I think the other boy didn't tell his mother, but he did like report it. This boy, who was also 14, he had a thing for 14, I guess, went and told his mother, and his mother went to the police. And the funniest thing happened. Because the boy was depressed and traumatized from being sexually assaulted, prosecutors decided there was no case because he was not a reliable witness. So nothing came of the situation.
Oh my God, that's so aggravating.
Yeah. They're like, well, you're really traumatized from what happened to you, so we can't do anything about what happened to you because you're not being strong enough to like help us out. And
Oh
it's
my
like,
God.
are you fucking kidding me? Fucking
Wow.
incredible. Just wow.
Amazing.
Meanwhile, Ryan continued his ultra religious shit and had already decided he was going to become a priest. One mother, like a woman who met him that same year at the campground, said a few things. First, she said it was very clear that he was gay and that she figured that he was joining, to become a priest so that he could avoid coming out to his parents. She
Right.
said that he talked obsessively about becoming a priest. She said he completely ignored girls, even though I guess he was pretty good looking at the time and they would flirt with him, but that he was always really focused on boys. So she didn't care, but she was like, these are my observations. He's gay. He's becoming a priest to like avoid having to deal with that.
Yeah.
Now, right after this, still in 1992, like right after this assault happened, Ryan entered the seminary. But before he entered the Immaculate Heart of Mary Seminary, which was on the campus of St. Mary's University in Winona, Wisconsin, he had to have a psychological evaluation. The doctor who performed this was Dr. Anthony Malozzi, and he concluded that Ryan was, quote, problem-free, appeared healthy, psychologically stable, and would make an outstanding priest.
Oh my God. Sure. Sure.
Sir, like you're so good at your job. Good job, dude. This was the same summer as the incident at Eagle Lake where he almost got prosecuted for molesting a 14-year-old when he's 18.
That's great. That's great.
It's so good. Now, beyond this, as part of his entering the seminary, he had to go through a number of interviews and things like everybody has to. Although at the end of this, you're going to ask why. Like, just let everybody in. And during these interviews, he admitted to 2 of the previous 3 incidents, including the one from high school and the one when he was 6 years old. Yeah.
There's so many parallels with cops too, because how many times have like people become cops with like no background check or like, or, you know,
or
not
it's fine. It's fine.
Yeah,
it was just whatever. Phase. Like just excusing it away and just allowing these people to pass through the system. It's fucking crazy. They did have a number of doubts about letting him join, but eventually they did let him in. So to me, this means that they don't just cover shit up, but they openly welcome people who create these issues. So like on the one hand, you might think like, oh, the Catholic Church shouldn't keep, covering this stuff up. They should just come out and like distance themselves from the individuals doing it. But it's like, no, this is a systemic thing within their whole church situation. Like these people are attracted to the church and the church welcomes them into the fold, into positions of power. You know, so it's way more like gnarly than you would think. While in the cemetery, you wish, the seminary, his drinking did not slow down. And I haven't mentioned this before, but he was also like an avid gun collector. He had at least 16 guns like registered to his name. I
don't love a drunk gun collecting priest. Like I don't love it.
No, it's not really a good thing. No. The drinking got so bad that the seminary intervened and sorry, I lost my place. Oh, and they had him speak with counselors and go into an AA program. So this, to me, shows that, they knew that he was also an alcoholic and they still took him in. So again, they're just like anybody can join. Anybody, once we've decided, we're just going to excuse everything they fucking do. And when it came time to ordain him, only one person voted against it, saying, quote, "I have serious reservations about his strength of character. I see him as one who deflects responsibility for his actions, loose with his tongue, and somewhat manipulative." The other 14 men voted him in. He was ordained in 2000 and went to St. Patrick's Church in Hudson, Wisconsin. There,
I love how they're like, this guy kind of sucks, but like, it's fine.
Yeah, we're going to let him.
Whatever.
Yeah, like we'll just let him in. It's fine. And as soon as he got to this church, he became like all like over the top crazy, like that old school hateful Catholicism. He'd speak in Latin. He would cry during the Eucharist. He railed against any sort of sexual sin, especially homosexuality. He would call people devils if they wore clothing that he deemed provocative.
So he's just laying it on as thick as humanly possible. Like he's being super performative.
Yes.
And yeah.
But also, I think it was an excuse for him to talk about the dirty little things that he really liked,
Oh, yeah,
He was obsessed with talking about homosexuality. He was obsessed with, like, talking about masturbation. And it's like, he talked about this constantly in church. And it's like, dude, you're just getting off on this.
Yeah. I mean, I think this about a lot of certain, like, Republican politicians when they get, like, so obsessed with trans people, for example, or so obsessed with gay stuff. I'm like, why do you spend your whole life thinking about this? Like,
right.
You know what I mean? They're not worried about you. Like,
yeah, they're not thinking about you every day, except for when you try to insert yourself into their lives because you really want their attention.
And like take away their rights. Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe it's time to look inwardly, guys. So this guy is like the perfect example of like exactly the type of person that we hate and that should not have power. There's many politicians and priests, I'm sure, and other people just like him. But he, like, some people called him a right-wing nut job. Others really loved how he preached. He would call out and denounce, quote, lukewarm Catholics, basically saying anybody who didn't live a strict Catholic lifestyle and attend church at least once a week was like a phony. And again, he would talk about masturbation all the time. He'd be like, you come to church in those clothes, somebody's going to leave here and go home and masturbate to the thought of you. Like, is that what you want? And it's like, bro, is that what you're doing? Like, why are you putting this out there? Yeah. But so this was like his obsession. And he didn't really like kids from what people said, but he would associate with conservative families with children, and he would have them all call him Pope. He actually asked people to call him Pope, which I'm pretty sure is not fucking allowed.
No. That's like very, very like sinful or whatever the fuck. Like,
It
that's
is,
not
right?
correct.
Yeah. He
Only
would
the only
also
the Pope is the Pope.
is the Pope. That's it. Yeah. He would
Yeah.
also wear a cassock, which are like the long robes, instead of the traditional
Mm-hmm.
priest garb. And he also carried a gun on him at all times because he had a concealed
Oh my
carry permit.
god.
Yeah. So
This guy's unhinged.
he's like, I wrote a very over the top, weird, possibly mentally ill man. And the only reason I say possibly is because I'm not a doctor. But if I
Right.
were just speaking casually between you and me, I'd be like, this guy has mental problems. And he does.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
So at some point while he was working in this church, he visited a Catholic high school and met up with a former student or acquaintance, this teen, 17-year-old Thomas Smith. Thomas then started to come visit with Ryan and at one point got in trouble with the law and ended up doing some community service under Ryan's supervision. And from here, things once again get dark. Father Ryan started giving
Okay.
Thomas alcohol, watching adult movies with him. The two would often sleep in bed together, and Thomas would pass out and not know what happened until the next morning. And even the next morning, he wouldn't know. You know what I mean? Like, he wouldn't know
Yeah.
what happened. He said later that he remembered about 10 times that the priest would put his hands on his genitals, but he doesn't recall anything more than that, though he does expect that some things happened while he was unconscious from all of the alcohol. He would drink till he would like throw up, and then Father Ryan would give him more alcohol. So he was doing this to knock him unconscious so that he could rape him, essentially. And I don't know how far it
Ugh.
went. Nobody knows how far it went, but we can all kind of guess, you know.
Yeah, for sure.
At the time, I think he knew what was going on, Thomas, but he wasn't sure of himself because, you know, he's 17, he's innocent. He thinks he can trust this priest, but he did start acting out and like other friends noticed it and actually realized like, oh, this is what the priest is doing. Like this is the priest's fault. And Thomas didn't want to be intimate with his girlfriend. He was having trouble like being emotional with people. He just had a lot of like walls starting to come up. It
Yeah.
wasn't until 2003, so 10 years later, when he was taking a college psychology class that he learned about grooming. And at this
Mm-hmm.
point, he went to the police.
Yeah, we figured it out.
He did. Unfortunately, the police only paid attention to the part where Father Ryan gave him alcohol, decided this wasn't a big deal, and let the case sit on their desk for over a year. So,
Okay.
yeah. Just so you guys know, Thomas does not die. Hopefully, he got therapy and is doing better, but a couple of other people did unfortunately die. In 2002, after many years of wild behavior that split the church members, some people were starting to catch on to Father Ryan's bullshit. One of these people was a
Yeah.
man named Dan O'Connell, a deeply Catholic man who lived in the area and was the director of the O'Connell family funeral home. On February 5th, 2002, Dan met with a friend, the Catholic school bus driver Mary Pagel, and asked her if she had ever seen Father Ryan abusing children or noticed that he focused mostly on boys. She said she hadn't seen anything, but did note that he did mostly pay attention to boys and suggested Dan go to the police with his concerns. Dan said, I have a meeting with Father Ryan today at noon. Later that day, while at the church, Mary, the bus driver, saw Father Ryan exit the rectory around 11:15 a.m. wearing plain clothes, which was very unlike him. Around 1:08 that same day, someone went into the O'Connell family funeral home and shot Dan O'Connell at point blank range directly in the head.
Oh my god.
Mhm. His assistant,
What?
James Ellison, who I think was around 20 years old, was in the building at the time and came to see what happened. And whoever shot Dan also came back into the room and shot James Ellison in the head as well, killing both of them instantly.
Holy shit.
Yes. Police had no leads after the murders, and despite a $100,000 reward and interviewing 1,800 people, including Father Ryan, the case went nowhere. Things continued on, and after a while, Father Ryan was transferred to a new church after one of the priests complained about his behavior and drinking. This priest, who was the higher up at the church, was also intermittently sick during the entire time Ryan was there, in and out of the hospital, needing like
Hmm.
care, all sorts of
Yeah.
issues. And as soon as Ryan was transferred, he suddenly got better.
Interesting.
Meanwhile, Ryan was talking about how someday he was going to take over for that priest. And I'm pretty sure he was trying to hasten that with a little bit of poison.
Just a sploosh, just a splash.
Yeah. Now, about 6 months or so later in early 2004, police got a lead. someone came forward and said that Father Ryan was a child abuser, and police started to kind of put things together, and they realized that that could have played into the murders because maybe Dan knew. They interviewed Ryan, and during the interview, they did something pretty clever. They asked him, do you know where the bodies were when they died? And he answered in the exact way that with exact details about how they died, saying, Dan was at his desk, James was in the doorway. And the cops
Oh
were
my
like,
God.
how did you know that? And he's like, oh, I heard it on the news. And they're like, no, we never released any of that. Nobody
Sure
would have
didn't,
known
buddy.
that. And
Yeah.
he went on a sort of like into a depression after that and was like, I done it and they're gonna catch me. He said that, like, some other person in the church heard him like saying that to himself after the cops left. So he's like, oh, another cop must have told me that or whatever. But the cop's like, okay, we got our guy. But they're not quite ready yet. So they come back a few weeks later, they interview him again, and 2 days later, investigators executed a search warrant on his living quarters, looking for evidence that would connect him to the murders. Among the things that they confiscated were his computer. And on the computer, they discovered a file that was deeply buried in my pictures / folder / holy mass prayers / mass prayers / new folder, which had been created on August 24th, 2004, and last accessed December 12th, 2004. And they were interviewing him like in early December 2004. This had photos, tons and tons of photos of nude adolescent boys. So like gnarly child porn under the
Yeah.
folder mass prayers, holy mass prayers. Like so gnarly.
So gross.
So cops are zeroing in, they're circling, they're gonna get him. And on December 19th, Ryan Erickson hung himself in the hallway of St. Mary's Church.
Ooh.
Yeah. Committing a sin in the actual church. His body was discovered by the church janitor and Richard Reams, a parishioner. He left two.
I mean, he was like sinning like nonstop. He couldn't stop sinning.
He is a complete piece of shit. He left 2 suicide notes, neither of which is worth reading. After his death, there was a hearing to establish his guilt in the 2 murders, just to like give the family's closure. But the weirdest thing is like the priest that he had been poisoning, a lot of the people who were like from his church, they all refused to cooperate because they felt like the police railroaded him. And it's like they literally just did their jobs. Like, so some of these people are so fucking brainwashed that they actually think this guy is like innocent. And it's like, well, if you guys are truly Catholic, then suicide is a sin. Like, what about that? You know what I mean? Like,
oh my God. No, it's just like with cops. People can't believe that they do anything wrong when all they do is do things wrong.
I know, and people just will not
keep idealizing them like they're these fucking heroes.
Yeah, and it's so
like
sick.
The church is so evil.
It's like, grow up, guys. I'm sorry. Fucking grow up. I know it hurts to deal with the reality, but that's the fucking reality. Like, you got to deal with it. So anyway, he was found guilty. The family's got their closure. He killed himself. I don't know where he's buried. I don't fucking care. The guy was a complete fucking piece of shit. I believe he was 31 years old when he died. So
wow, 31.
I know, a short and horrible fucking life.
Yeah, he managed to get a lot of atrocities in his short
really
life.
Fucking bad. Yeah, really fucking bad.
Oh, yeah, well, that was bleak.
Was right.
Yeah,
so fucked up.
What are we doing next week? It's your topic.
I know. I had such a good idea and now it flew out of my brain and I was like, we're going to do it. And we've been talking about doing it forever. And I was actually like talking to somebody online about it. My God, what was it? I can't think of it. Well, I'll have to think of something. Why don't we I would like to revisit Murders of Australia because I don't know that we've redone that one. And we have a lot of Australian listeners. Did we?
We did.
Did we?
That could be crazy.
Do it again. I still want to do it again.
I mean, there's more than enough. We could do a long series.
I want to do another one because we have so many Australian listeners and I think it's just kind of fun to do that. Is that terrible to do it again?
No, let's do it. No, I don't think we have redone it.
I kind of feel like we haven't. We just happen to cover a lot of Australian cases because y'all got a lot of murders out there. But like, I'd like to redo it in an official capacity where we're going to Australia. Okay. We're hanging out. We're talking about murders. Yeah. Okay.
Let's do it.
Sweet.
Yeah, they're gnarly.
Yeah, they really are. Stoked. Okay. So that's what we're going to do next week. Sorry, we're a couple days late. It's so funny. Like we were like, oh, we're keeping to the Thursday schedule. And then like, as soon as we stopped recording last the last episode, we're like, oh, fuck, we can't record until after Thursday. So
Yeah.
joke was on all of our listeners. Sorry, guys. We appreciate you. Sorry for the tardiness, but we'll get this episode up. And then next week, we're going to talk about murders in Australia. It's going to be great. I also think of Australia as like a summery place, and we're kind of slowly moving into summer. So that feels good. Yes. Yeah. So that's what we'll do. Thanks everybody for listening. You know where to find us online. Everything's in the show notes. If you don't know, you can find us in our show notes and follow us on Instagram and everywhere else. And until the next one,
stay
off our Stab 'em.
Damn.